Hello and welcome to my Asmodeous accessories tutorial. You're going to need some 5mm EVA foam cut into this shape. Then you're going to heat it with a heat gun to seal it, bend it into shape with another piece that fits the gap, cut it to shape and heat it with a heat gun as well. Then, using felt that has adhesive on one side, cut a piece that matches the EVA foam you just cut out, but making it slightly bigger so there's overhang. Check the fit against the piece of foam and then stick it on. You'll want to feed this inside of the hat that you've made previously. This is going to help the joints to stick together and give it some internal structure. Once you've checked the fit, use some UHU glue and do a test piece. Then cut out the brim for the hat. You'll need 2 more pieces of that felt from before, one for the bottom part and one for the top, as this doesn't actually have any internal structure, so anything you glue down to it will only be able to be stuck by a very small surface area. By adding this piece of felt, you increase the surface area and therefore it's more durable. Now that rim has been heat sealed and cut to shape, so we're going to want to seal the top part and then the bottom part. And now it's all nice and secure. Unfortunately, I filmed this next bit sped up, but you want to take some UHU and another piece of EVA foam and glue it onto the top of the top hat. And then use craft clay, and you're going to want to seal all the edges. Now, this is basically a much more moldable version of Warbler or craft EVA foam, and it takes 24 hours to dry if it's used in a really thin layer, or 48 hours if you're making something like a bead or a pendant. I normally leave it for a full 48 hours just to be sure. Once you've got it on there, use a very thin layer and use your fingers to smooth it out. And don't worry about any bumps or lumps, because once it's fully dry you can always sandpaper it down, which I did later. Here's the finished look. I left it for about 2 full days to cure, and then you can sandpaper it down and paint it straight away. I didn't film sandpapering it down, but you can imagine. I used a ventilated spray booth and some matte black spray paint. Now you can prime it, but this is the colour that I wanted anyway, and I used 2 coats of it and it turned out exactly how I wanted it. For all of the details, I'm using a red model paint provided by my father and a tiny detail brush. I'm doing 2 lines, one on the bottom and one on the top, and then filling it in with a slightly bigger brush. In between coats, I let it dry for an entire day. I ended up doing 2 coats for both sections, and I used the big brush to paint on top as well, just to match his style. And now we glue the feathers on, making sure that the paint is 100% dry to the touch and placing the feathers delicately to match what Asmodeous has on his hat. I checked these and double checked them and triple checked them before I glued them down, using a very thin layer of UHU glue and the nozzle of the tube to spread it out. This is where that felt really comes into play. Because it's fabric, it absorbs a lot of the glue and leaves a really tacky, sticky surface, which means that all of the fibres of the feathers really absorb the glue and they stick together like magic. Here I'm being very careful in placing the feathers, not rushing, and being incredibly gentle when I push the feathers into the glue surface that's been left behind. After they cured, I think I left them for a couple of hours and then put another very thin layer of UHU just to make sure that both of the feathers were stuck together and that everything was secure down. Now unfortunately I didn't get any footage of the design for these pieces. My brother designed them off of a photo that I found of Asmodeous, but we made 2 in the end of different sizes. Using a white matte paint to prime them, I ended up doing about 3 or 4 coats on the edges and the front, and I left the back completely bare because you wouldn't see it at all. Once that was all completely dry, I used a blue model colour. I think I used 2 or 3 coats of this, really thin, and let them completely dry before I put another coat on, making sure that you get all of the edges and all of the ridges, and definitely inside those eyes and the mouth. These pieces were 3D printed through resin. If you want the design, we can make it available, just ask. Once all the paint was 100% dry, I added 2 magnets to the ghost pieces with UHU Glue, making sure that they matched the magnets that I'd hidden in the wig previously. I used 5mm circular magnets here, and if you have any questions about anything else used, please leave it in the comments below. Unfortunately, I didn't film the very last part, but I added some glow-in-the-dark green UV paint to the eyes and the mouth. And that's the finished look! Thank you so much for watching this tutorial, I hoped it helped you. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!